When trying to figure out what carbohydrates need to be enzymatically digested, first look at the example given, which is milk. Which of those macronutrients listed are carbohydrates? So for the example given of milk, we see lactose, triglycerides, and protein already filled out. Which of those three are macronutrients? Now remember what we said at the week 1 were macronutrients that needed to be enzymatically digested. Those were carbohydrates, protein, and fats, which here we'll call lipids. Now water is also a macronutrient, but that does not have to be enzymatically digested. It is absorbed as is. So is lactose a carbohydrate? Right here on page 66. Look over at page 64. On page 64, we are only going to be looking at the carbohydrates, the monosaccharides, the disaccharides, and the polysaccharides. This week, we are not looking at the lipids and the protein. So is lactose a carbohydrate? Yes, you see it right there. It is a disaccharide. Are triglycerides a carbohydrate? No. You see triglycerides under here as a lipid. Is protein a carbohydrate? No. Protein is a different macronutrient, and this week we are only looking at carbohydrates. Now going back to page 66, there is a column there that's already filled out. That's the why part. Why does the cow put lactose in its milk? It puts the lactose there for energy for the growing calf. But that lactose is too big to pass into the blood. So the calf will break it down into its components, which are glucose and galactose. And that's exactly what we do too when we drink milk. So let's look at some other examples, like this butter. Would butter have carbohydrate? Look over here. Do you see it on any of those lists for carbohydrate? No, what butter has are triglycerides, because any food with fat has triglycerides. So butter does not have much of anything in the way of carbohydrates. Same with soybean oil. Soybean oil is just the oil of the soybeans. So it does not have carbohydrate. Foods with protein like chicken and fish, foods with protein like eggs, both of those foods, there are two lines there, and those go for protein and triglycerides, which we will look at next week. But going on down to the foods with protein like a pinto bean, they are a legume. And if you look over at page 64, you see legumes are a pea in a pod, like a kidney bean, or a pinto bean. So if you look down, those have starch. Notice starch says seed foods, like rice, oatmeal, and dried legumes, like a pinto bean or a kidney bean. So that what you would put here under the first line here would be starch in that food with protein like a pinto bean. Why does it put it there? For energy for the developing sprout. And then what happens to it in the digestive tract? That starch is way too big to be absorbed. So it's going to be broken down to glucose. So what you would put in this third column is glucose. So let's see what you do with the rest of this table, and again, just focusing on the foods with carbohydrate. And we'll talk about this in the forum.